Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I wasn't smart enough to bring a beer up here with me, like Sean, so it was a good move. After the slides. So I'm here really not to try to describe the process of a startup, but really to talk about my personal views on what I see going on in the Internet of Things, which if you listen to everything going on in the news is pretty much everything anymore. People are labeling as IoT or Internet of Things. And the title is Internet of Things Does Not Exist, which I'll talk about in a second. But first of all, let me talk about what's going on with the Internet of Things. So just to give you some perspective, so I've been around in technology for a while, especially in mobile and high tech. Consulting, really almost every aspect of it, so I appreciate how hard it is to do hardware, frankly. And I've worked with some pretty big companies. You might have heard of it, HP. My last role there was running business development and strategy for mobile globally. But I've done a lot of things in different parts of the industry, including even in the intellectual property side. So come at it from a big company, but as a person who's been building businesses in quite a lot of different environments. And I've worked a lot with, especially with mobile operators all over the world, with an emphasis on Europe and North America. And about 2 years ago, a little over that now, I put together a joint venture, which is one of the earlier joint ventures in what we call the M2M space, called Convita Wireless, which was a large JV to advance the platform and the patents around what was going on with standards-based M2M. And that was in conjunction with Sony and with Stevens Capital. So I come at this as someone who's been out there sort of practicing in many different environments, both geographically and from a business segment, in terms of how do I figure out what's going on in this crazy space we call IoT. And the reason there's so much buzz about IoT today is because there's so much potential money there. When you look at what's going on in the space, whether you look at it from a broad horizontal perspective of what GE and the World Bank says is something that's approximately equal to the US economy will be created in the next 10 or 15 years. Whether you look at it in particular verticals, whether from a new product and service or the savings that will be incurred. Did you realize, for instance, that half of all pollution is from two activities: looking for a parking place or stuck in traffic? According to some of the stats. You talk to people in the water space, you find out that at least a third of all water flowing into today's cities is disappearing sometime, somewhere, between the source and the tap. And if you go to Europe, they say it's more like 50 because the stuff's so old. Okay? Industry by industry, there is nothing that will be untouched by this trend. And so because there's so much potential benefit and so much potential revenue, there's so much potential buzz, fluff, misconceptions, and stories about your refrigerator ordering milk for you when you run out. Just to frame it up, this is a line where you can see sort of the Internet of Things growth versus smartphones, tablets, PCs. We're right here now. We're almost to the point where IoT is going to be bigger than those three categories combined, just to put some context on that. So this isn't something that's happening 10 or 20 years from now. This is something that's literally happening every day as we speak. And I actually predict that this line will cross earlier than what is predicted here based on what's going on in the market right now. So if you think about the Internet of Things in general, and why do people really worry about it? Well, there's really only three main reasons you deploy an IoT solution. And that is for new revenue streams, for products and services. Really enables everything to be a service at some level. And so hardware in some ways becomes a mechanism to deliver a service. The efficiencies you get out of Internet of Things. Peter Drucker was very famous for saying, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. Well, what happens when you can measure everything? I mean, that's the concept of everything with a microprocessor and connectivity delivering data, which you can now use for more intelligent answers to make new products and services and save money. And then finally, regulatory compliance. You'd be shocked at how many things are out there today which require someone with a clipboard walking around saying, yep, if the building catches fire, the lights will stay on. Don't worry. Okay? I'm sure that person wasn't hungover or late for work that day, or everything's okay. Quite a bit of regulatory compliance that you're not going to see on the surface is going to go on with IoT. The problem is, if you are a company that is thinking about anything that we would call IoT, it's actually a pretty major project to even do anything in this area. You usually start out by thinking about a device. I have something either that's already out there that's collecting data, or I have something I'm going to deploy to collect data. And the estimates, going back to that other slide, you know, the low estimates are 50 billion-ish, 50 billion from Cisco and Ericsson, 25 billion IDC. I think ABI put out a number at 75 billion. So it's an arms race of billions of estimates. It doesn't really matter which number you believe. It's going to be huge. So a lot of people, because of these huge numbers, get really focused on the device side of this. And there's certainly a market for these devices. ARM Technologies is a launch partner of ours globally. So we appreciate the importance of devices and then being able to do something with those devices. But what you very, very quickly realize is that that's just the beginning, because as someone in the industry said a couple months ago, you know, the Internet of Things is about the things, stupid. And that's sort of like saying that you're buying drills to watch the drill bit spin around. You're buying drills to make holes, and you're deploying things to get data. That is the only purpose you're putting them out in the market. So what do you do with that data? Well, there's a lot of things you can do with the data. First, you have to put it somewhere, right? You have to host it. You have to put it in a data store of some structure so you can actually access it and use it. You know, you might pull in historical or third-party data. You're going to do business rule engines, analytics, lots and lots of things. It's not unusual. By the time you're done putting together this solution to have 6, 8, 10 different hands touching this value to get the data out of it that you need to justify your project and to get the full benefit. So you have this massive gap in between these two things, because right now, this is really a very custom process. So you're not only have to provide a technical integration between each one of these parties that are involved in a solution. At the same time, every one of these connections represents a business and legal negotiation. So when you add all that friction up, that's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of risk. And it also assumes that you're guessing correctly the first time, because the second you want to change it, you do it all over again. So where have we seen an example where we've removed the friction, where when you want to consume something that does something with your data, you don't have to negotiate a legal agreement every time. You don't have to negotiate, bless you, the technology involved in it. You just simply consume it. Where have we seen that? Maybe you've heard of it. It's called iTunes. You know? You don't get scale in the industry until you've abstracted those problems. This isn't the perfect analogy for what my company is doing. Probably Salesforce is a better one. But my point is, as an industry, you only get scale with getting the friction out. And so just one slide on what we're doing. So Wotio, my company, really takes care of this friction problem by providing a data service exchange of pre-integrated components, so integrated on a technical and business level, where you no longer have to do a custom integration every time you're trying to connect all the blocks you need to provide a solution. And so it allows the businesses to focus on the business value, and then we focus on providing the back end. Similar to like if you're going to write a piece of software today, would you go out and write your own relational database? You probably wouldn't do that. It wouldn't add a lot of value. And you're going to see the same thing happening in IoT, and that's really our focus in the industry. So why do I say that there really isn't anything called the Internet of Things if I just talked about the Internet of Things and all the value? Because to us, the people trying to look at it from a market perspective, we put this wrapper around it. If you are a person, though, who has to deploy a solution, you're not calling up your systems integrator or your IT department and saying, can I have 20 pounds of IoT tomorrow and I'd like it in blue? Okay? That's not what you're doing. You're saying, I have a precision watering problem where I can save 20% of the water consumption in agriculture. Or you're saying, I have a building automation problem, I have a smart lighting problem, I have a retail problem with thousands of franchisees that I need to monitor everything from the ovens to the temperature where the customers sit. So you're not thinking about it in terms of IoT, you're thinking of it in terms of a business problem specific to your industry. And that's why I say that if you don't think of it from that perspective, you won't be able to access the opportunities in the marketplace. So I'll leave you with a couple of predictions. It's still relatively early in the year. So what you're going to see this year is that consumer tends to get a lot of press, but the real meaty solutions are going to come in industrial and enterprise, and that's where the real spend's going to happen. It's really easy for journalists to write these articles about, again, your texting refrigerator is going to call your drone to deliver milk, and you don't have to worry about it. Frankly, you can hire an intern to do that at half the price. The real ROI and the real majority of, I think, the spend is going to come in the things you don't see. Some of the examples I just mentioned. Cold chain. Did that burger stay under freezing on the whole trip to Burger King? Okay? Little things like that have real value in it versus some of these consumer things that are much more easy to write about. I actually have a collection in the office now of doggy tracker advertisements. Some of these companies, I think one of them was in the Wall Street Journal, had a $15 million raise a couple weeks ago. And I make 2 points. One is, I don't personally care to invest in that Fitbit for Fluffy, but it's yet another example of how IoT is not an industry of horizontals, it's an industry of sub-verticals. And as somebody, that's going to be important. The language will evolve from technical to business. I don't know if anybody here has a mobile background remembers 20 years ago, CDP, the cellular standard, that allowed you to put modules on trucks so you could know where the trucks were some of the time and save how many trucks you needed. And we've gone from CDP to telematics to M2M to Internet of Things, and who knows what the next version will be. But just like in PCs and other technology, you're going to see a major shift this year as this becomes ingrained in almost every kind of technology conversation, from technical to business, and that just shows the amount of attention it's getting. And then finally, I think you're going to continue to see this massive fight for mind share, for thought leadership, for some very, very large players. And I don't begrudge them. I wish I had marketing departments like that too, and I think they're going to do some good stuff in this space. But I think at the end of the year, you're going to see some really fantastic use cases that are enabled by data that was never available before, especially when you get into cross-domain type data. That is going to shock everybody. And those specific demonstrable use cases are what are going to drive the conversation in 2016. So thank you for your time. That's a quick view of the Internet of Things market. And any questions?
Great, thank you very much. I'd love to hear more about the customer engagement that you guys have done over these 208.
So it's a wide range of things. So we're actually involved in, a lot of them are characterized by messiness, in that you're not going to change your whole existing IT infrastructure for this new thing called IoT. You need to be able to deal with it as it is. And so whether some of the smart city stuff we're working on that'll be coming out in Europe later this year, some of the stuff here more domestically, everything from agriculture to smart building to the retail stuff to especially some energy stuff. It's really often situations where people have devices that are collecting data, but I've seen statistics that 85% of enterprise data is actually just waste, going on the floor, just laying there. And now we really enable these companies to actually create new product services, insights, and efficiencies. So it's really the people that are already producing data.
Thank you. Questions? So you guys are based here?
24th Street, right near Madison Square Park.
And what is your team look like in terms of range of backgrounds?
A real mix. The founder team is a team of people that have been around. Our VP of Business Development, Carl, here, is actually ex-Oracle, but also did a data startup for a number of years. Mitchell is right back here. He actually started the biggest IoT meetup in New York City. Some of you may know Mitchell from some of that, but has a great entrepreneurial VC and international background. And then our CTO, Tom, ran advanced research for Apple 20 years ago and has done about a dozen startups at this point, and he's done extremely well with it. So we have a pretty experienced team on board.
Do you find that New York is a good place to hire, or has there any that works?
We specifically picked New York City to build this company. We could have built this in Silicon Valley. We could have built this in probably only a couple of places because of the skill set we need. We picked this for a couple of reasons. One is the level of talent here. Because almost all our guys, the vast majority of our employees are software engineers doing some very special things. But also, IoT is a technology that's not Silicon Valley owned. It's really driven out of really unsexy places like Minneapolis and Austin. It's spread around, and this is a great place where you can leverage the West Coast, you can leverage Europe very easily. So it's actually a perfect place for us to be.
In terms of demand, you find geographic disparity. Are you finding Europe and here?
We're more focused on North America, but we're doing more and more in Europe. We're just, North America is just easier because we're here. But we'll probably do Asia more in 2016.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.